Hi, I'm Lori Leek. Welcome to my kitchen. I just came in here to go ahead and start making dinner tonight, and I'm not sure yet what I'm going to make, but I thought I would bring you along for the process. One of the things I try to do is just give myself enough time so that I'm not rushed, and then I can enjoy being here, working in the kitchen, taking my time to figure out what I'm gonna make. So I've been in here for a few minutes and I opened the fridge and just kind of looked around in there to see what needed to be paid attention to. What do I need to use up? How can I put together a meal with what is in there? And so I saw that the cauliflower was starting to get some little spots on the white part. I'll have to scrape those off, but I'll show you that process. And the squash, the yellow squash definitely needs to be used, so I'm gonna cook that up in a way that makes good use of it, even though it's starting to get a little punky. And the other day I decided to hold back an avocado because I had other things to use up instead, but now it's time to use that avocado. So that's gonna get used today. Oh, the only reason the lemons are out is because I had a bag of 3 large lemons in there and one had already molded. So I was thinking to myself, I just needed to have dug through that bin earlier and not lost that lemon. I don't like to waste food. So I'll go ahead and put those back in the fridge, and at least I know that part of our dinner will consist of the cauliflower, the summer squash, and probably I'm going to use the avocado in some kind of a cold salad. When I was just in the fridge putting the lemons away, I found some asparagus. They came yesterday in the farm box delivery that we get each week that comes on Wednesdays. Today's Thursday. So I'm going to show you something that I learned about asparagus. First of all, I always smell them and make sure that they still smell fresh and good, because asparagus, when they're going bad, they start to smell bad. So, you know, I just give them a good sniff, and these still smell really good. Since I'm gonna cook up the squash and the the cauliflower, I don't think I wanna try to fit in the asparagus tonight. So what I wanna do is help them last a little bit longer, and I'm going to do that with a glass of water. I am going to almost treat them like flowers. I think they're in the flower family. So I'm going to cut off about 1 inch of the ends, and that will make them able to drink up the water a little bit more. And then, instead of a glass of water, I'm using a canning jar that I think is actually referred to as an asparagus jar. So I'm going to put them in here. This bunch is just about the perfect size for this jar. All right, so they're all in there. And now I'm going to add some water to them. So now they're sitting in some water, and I'm going to put them in my fridge. They'll just go over here and wait in the fridge until I need to use them again. Now these ends, I'm not throwing these vegetable ends away. Those I'm going to put in my scrap bag that I keep in the freezer. This is pretty much full now, and maybe I'll even go ahead and start processing it so I can show you that part. So in these go. Actually, that's what I will do. I'll get out my my Instant Pot and put this in and set that to go. Okay, I've got the Instant Pot sitting there ready to go. This is the liner from it, and I'm just going to dump the contents into the liner. I'm not even going to throw this bag away. It's going to get used again, filled up with more vegetable scraps. So that's in the freezer, and now I have this pot full of vegetable scraps, and I'm going to put some water in here for pressure cooking. I've only filled it 2/3 full because in order to build the pressure, it needs some head space. So it's got water in here, and I just wanted to point out I've got all kinds of vegetable scraps in here from red onion skins. There's some more asparagus ends that are frozen from the last time I used asparagus. Got the broccoli, the hard broccoli outside of the stem when I buy a head of broccoli that has all the stem on. Crowns are more expensive, so I go ahead and buy the large bunch of broccoli, and I use that long stem part. I peel off the hard outside, and then we eat the inside piece, like some would eat raw celery stick or cucumber or whatever. It's nutritious. So I did that, and there's some carrot scraps in here, zucchini top, all kinds of things. They just get thrown in the bag as I cook, and I collect them until it's time to make vegetable broth. Okay, I'm gonna lock on the lid, make sure it is closed, and then hit pressure cook. And I've learned the easiest thing is to go down. The next number I'm gonna get is 4 hours, and that's fine with me. I'm gonna pressure cook it for 4 hours. Here's the yellow summer squash that I'm cutting up. I kind of cut it in chunks, and over there on the right are the scraps that I'm collecting for the next bag full of scraps that I'll be making vegetable broth out of. So the process just goes around and around with the vegetable broth making. I'm going to be cooking up the summer squash in this 5-quart pan, and what I've done is I've put a little water in the bottom of the pan because I'm pulling back on the fats a little bit. That's about 2 tablespoons of fat there, and I'll show you how I'm going to cook up the squash. But I don't want to use a whole lot of fat, but the fat gives it flavor. So the water is to take the place of some of the fat and help in the cooking process. All right, so the summer squash is now cut up and put in the 5-quart pan with that little bit of water in the bottom and about 2 tablespoons of butter tops. I'm going to season it with some pepper, salt, and some garlic powder. Looking at this makes me sad. This is Dan & Witt's container that I got last summer in Vermont. I'm not going to get to be there in Vermont this summer. Oh well, COVID changes things. There's a picture of Dan & Witt's, and that's what it looks like. So I got this container last summer because I wanted something from what I consider to be home, and then I just keep refilling it as it empties. But the container is special to me. I am going to turn this on to probably a medium-low heat there. And I'll put the lid on to let it start sweating. While the squash is starting to cook, I'm going to show you about dealing with the cauliflower. There are these little spots starting to crop up on it, but that's not a problem. I'll scrape that away. I'll show you what that looks like. So the first thing I do is I'm just going to make cutting this cauliflower up easy on myself. I'm going to cut it right down the middle through the plastic. And then I'm going to use another knife to get out some of the core. So I cut that kind of in a triangle shape. This will go in the freezer bag for vegetable scraps. All of this will. And then what I do to scrape off the edges is take this over the sink. I just take the edge of the knife and kind of nick off the bad spots. And it scrapes down into the sink. I'll wash that away after I am done all this scraping job. This part came off. So nick it away with a knife. Sometimes you can cut it. Depends on your own style, how you want to do it. I guess I'm gonna go cutting this time. So it's like shaving off these bad parts. So that's all there is to that, and then I'll go ahead and do the other one. And both of these pieces get a good rinsing. I'm getting the pot ready, so I use a little bit of water in the bottom of the cooking pot. I just break the head up into some pieces. So there's the pot filled with the vegetable. I'm just gonna put the lid on it, and this is gonna go on the stovetop. Oh, by the way, I've had heads of cauliflower that were worse off looking than that and done surgery on them. So you don't have to throw away. Try to save what you can instead of wasting money. So more scraps for the vegetable bag. Let's check on the summer squash and see how that's doing. Starting to soften. So I want to basically let the water now cook off, and I will stir and keep an eye on this, but I wanted to use the lid on to let it start softening the vegetables. But I see that I have plenty of water in here, so now I'm just gonna let it start cooking off, and I'll keep an eye on this and keep coming back to stir it. So this is gonna sit here, and I think that's good for right there. I'm gonna let that cook away. Maybe turn down the heat a little bit. Okay. Slowed the process down a little bit so I don't have to be quite as careful. While I let the squash cook, I want to take care of some green peppers that I had in the fridge. I'm going to go ahead and cut them up for freezing. They're still in really good shape. Nothing had happened to them, and I don't have to deal with them today, but I might as well while I have some time on my hands. So I'm going to just prepare these for freezing. I dice them up and I put them on a cookie sheet and let them freeze, and then I put them in a baggie, and I have frozen green pepper. I do this with onions and celery as well as with parsley. I've done a video about saving your greens. So I will get this cut up and put into the freezer for someday when I need some green pepper in a recipe. I don't usually use green pepper raw in a salad unless I need to, but I do use a lot of green pepper in cooking. I'm only going to cut up this half on camera just so you can see how I cut it up, and then I'll just flip to when I'm getting ready to put it on a tray for the freezer. So here it is, sitting on a tray, ready to go in the freezer, and I'll let this freeze solid, and then I'll put it in a bag. This is another one of those 2-gallon Ziploc bags, and this is all I have left in the freezer from some other big batch that I did. I usually keep them rolled up like this in the freezer, and I like the 2-gallon Ziploc bags because the mouth is so wide that my cutting sheets can slide right in like you saw me do with the vegetable scraps. Speaking of vegetable scraps, we have more to add to the bag. Yes, even the seeds. Doesn't bother. Okay, more for the freezer, more for when I get ready to make soup. Summer squash is coming along nicely. I could go ahead and stop it at this point. much of the liquid is cooked off. I don't want it to be cooked down dry. And I am cooking this dinner a little bit ahead, so I'm gonna have to warm everything up right before serving. So maybe having that extra liquid in the bottom will be to my advantage. So talking that through makes me think that I am gonna go ahead and turn this off and cover it up and then let it sit until it's time to do the final steps of getting ready to serve dinner. I think I'm gonna go ahead and cook the cauliflower too, and then bring it to a sort of a tender, crisp state, and then set that aside as well. So I'll keep an eye on that. I think it's time to deal with this tray of banana bars that I made. So I made these last night, and I will put the recipe link in the bottom of this video. These were made with some ugly old bananas that needed to be cooked up. So now I'm going to finish cutting these bars up. I'd sort of marked some scores where my cutting lines were gonna be. I'm gonna finish cutting them up and wrap them into serving portions. I do that a lot and just stick them in the freezer so that we can pull them out when we're ready to have them. So I'll finish cutting along those guidelines. Steve was really happy to have these last night as something sweet after dinner. So I think I'm gonna center that. And then, yeah, that longer bar, I do. I like the longer shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Which means these are generous pieces. Okay, and then, so that will, I'm gonna end up wrapping 2 of these bars together. I'll show you that in a minute. I buy this big box of wax paper sheets at Sam's Club, and I'm gonna cut off the seam. And these are going to be perfect as dividers between the bars. So I think that, just estimating, nice. So I use some plastic wrap and then set a bar down, put it on the edge to roll it up. Some wax paper, and the other bar on top. That makes a very nice, generous serving of dessert. And then I wrap up the ends. And that's how I'm going to wrap up this whole tray. Those are going to go in the freezer. So while I deal with all of these, I'll explain what we like about these bars. They are a recipe from a young woman named Brianna. And she is one of the bloggers for Trim Healthy Mama. She made this recipe so that it uses up old bananas and oatmeal that you turn into oat flour just by putting it in your food processor or blender. And the recipe, the liquid in it on her recipe is water, but I make it with my milk kefir. It does happen to call for protein powder, but the nice thing about that is it means that these bars have an extra dose of protein in them. So it's the bananas, the protein powder, the water, the oat flour. She also calls for oat fiber, which helps cut down on the carbs a little bit and increases the fiber in this recipe. I took her recipe and I doubled the spices. what else did I do? Instead of using water, I use my milk kefir as my liquid. That also adds more protein to these bars. And, oh, I don't know if I said I double the spices because we like the spice flavor of these bars. And, I use Serene's trick of adding oolong tea leaves to this recipe. So literally taking a bag of oolong tea and opening it, tearing it off and sprinkling the tea leaves into the batter. In this batch that I made, I used 4 of these oolong tea bags. Now I guess I have to have a cup of tea. So I'll start the tea water. I can't remember now why the inclusion. I know that it adds some, I think, polyphenols to this. That tip comes from Serene's, I think, Wake Up bars. Maybe I'll see if that recipe is public and available for sharing. If not, you'll just have to go with my idea of adding the tea to these bars. But that's what I did, is I took the idea from Serene's recipe and I combined it with Brianna's recipe. And I like Brianna's recipe because I'm trying to remember why I chose it over Serene's, but I did, and I've almost got these bars wrapped up for the freezer. The nice thing is individually wrapping these servings, you can pull them out of the freezer. It doesn't take long to thaw, and by putting them in the freezer, they'll stay good for a longer time. Wow, that was perfect. I have the perfect number of sheets to go between these bars. Okay, so I think that's all I need to share. Okay, these bars are ready to go in my bin. So I'll load them up. See, I had one lonely dessert serving in here. These are some ginger crinkles that I made that are not Trim Healthy Mama compliant. So they're sitting in there, and I will load this up with these bars. I don't want to squish them in too much. There. So that's ready to go back in the freezer. Steve will appreciate having some dessert available. As for cleaning this tray up, it could be a bear. So since I'm a little on the lazy side, I'm gonna make my work a little bit easier on myself by filling this up with water and letting it soak for a while before I try to deal with it. So this will get set aside, and since it's on the edge of this, it'll be near the sink, I'll just be able to pour off the water and scrape it up. I intend to use this as my scraping cleaner. So the spatula that I got them out of the pan with will be part of my cleaning tools, and so that's just gonna sit here. I have to be careful not to overfill it on this end, but it will soak for a little bit. Okay, the cauliflower is just right in its doneness, so I'm gonna pour off the water. And then I'm gonna put some butter in this pan and let that sit together. I had a stick of butter in the fridge, and so I'm gonna just shave off some of that to melt in here. I think that's good enough. Now one more. Okay, I'll put the lid back on, and then that will melt. Now the butter that I added to this pan, it has melted, and the reason I do it the way I do is because I've got this melted butter sloshing around down here. I can take and just flip this over and give it a couple of turns and let that butter kind of coat all of the broccoli. No, cauliflower. Broccoli, cauliflower, cauliflower, broccoli. So now I've coated it, and it can just sit and be ready for when I want to reheat the pan on low for dinner tonight. I was back in the fridge doing some more cleaning out and sorting and organizing just to make sure everything's rotating through well and not being wasted. And I looked at the jar of asparagus and I decided that I might not get to them even tomorrow, and I don't want them sitting there drying out. So I just slipped a baggie over the top to give them a little extra protection. So they've got the water to drink and the baggie over the top to protect them. And so that's the update on the asparagus. As I'm looking at what I have in my fridge and thinking about the right order of using things up so nothing goes to waste, I realized that these cheeseburger pie pieces that I made in one of my other videos, they either need to be used up right away or they can go in the freezer. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take these as they are and just stick them in the freezer, and they can hold until Sunday. This is some very finely chopped broccoli. When I was in the refrigerator, I saw the broccoli and realized that that actually needed to be used up. So it became a broccoli salad, and the avocado and the peppers that are behind, they got put back into the refrigerator. I'll put a picture in of the broccoli salad and what that turned out to be. In the process of shifting gears and making broccoli salad, I realized I also needed to make some mayonnaise. So I'll show you a picture of that. Now, the next thing here is with the broccoli salad suddenly coming in, I went to the back freezer and pulled out a few pieces of bacon that I had in there, and I heated those up and crisped them to be able to use in the broccoli salad. And because I cut up the broccoli, I ended up peeling the stems that were part of the broccoli and snacked on those with some cheese and crackers while I was making dinner. I think I showed in the vegetable scrap bag clip that I use the broccoli stems, peel them down, and we eat them. They're nutritious. And with the switch to all of a sudden make a broccoli salad, I needed to make some more homemade mayonnaise because my last batch was used up. So this picture shows what's required to make the mayonnaise. It's very fast. I will link a video clip in the description area of this video, and you can see just how fast it is to throw together some homemade mayonnaise. It really didn't slow my cooking process down very much. So anyway, the video for making mayonnaise will be in the description box of this video. After I used the mayo in making the broccoli salad, I remembered that I forgot. I forgot to show you the mayo after I had made it with the immersion wand, the stick blender. My mayo is very yellow because of my friend's chickens. They're free range, and so their yolks are intensely orange, and my mayo turns out yellow like this. But boy, is it good. Part of what makes it so good is that I know exactly all the ingredients that I put in my mayo, and it's healthy and it's fast to make. So I can't remember the last time I bought a jar of mayonnaise. I just always make my own now. I just took the lid off from the Instant Pot to show you what the vegetable broth looks like. Here is the vegetable broth. I drained off the broth from the vegetables and then put everything, put the liquid in quart-sized baggies, and now it's going to go into the freezer and freeze solid. Okay, I'm starting to get things on the table and Steve's almost home. So here is the broccoli salad. That's the finely chopped broccoli mixed together with the crisped up bacon. I put in some pumpkin seeds and a little bit of finely diced extra sharp cheddar cheese that I had, and instead of raisins or dried cranberries that I've had this salad with before, this time I put in some dried goji berries for the chew added to it, and that's all stirred up, moistened with the homemade mayonnaise. And here is the whole dinner set out before us. Things that needed to be used up. I have the leftover barbecue meats from our anniversary dinner, and the summer squash you saw me cook up, and then the cauliflower is there, and the broccoli salad. So dinner is served, and then next I will show the dessert that we finished it off with. Here is some strawberry milk kefir frozen dessert, sort of like an ice cream. And I made that recently in another dinner video. I will link that video along with the timestamp to go to see how milk kefir ice cream is made. So there we are, the end of dinner. Dinner is served, and you made it through my talking to myself, talking to you as I prepared dinner tonight. Thank you very much.